Greetings nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of Commander Cheapskate Reviews. This is a series that's dedicated to the review of products, books, rules, and game systems dedicated to miniatures wargaming. And on today's episode, we're taking another look at the Warhammer Armies project. In this case, we're taking a look at the 9th edition rules for Warhammer Wood Elves. So as you guys have been aware, we've been doing a couple of reviews for the Warhammer Armies project, and on today's episode, this will be our focus. We'll be taking a look at the 9th edition army book for Wood Elves for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. We'll talk about some of the positive and negative effects of some of the changes that are taking place within this army booklet. At the same time, talk about the army rules, we'll talk about the army lists, special characters, magic items, the spells they have, and do a really in-depth look at this document. Now, this video will be a little bit longer than usual, and the reason why is because we're doing a deep delve into the rule system. So, and if you don't want to go through the entire video, I do have timestamps down in the description down below that you guys can kind of pick and choose what sections you want to cover. So with that being said, let's get this video review on a roll. Alright, so the very first thing we do real quick is go to the table of contents. So as you can see here, there's a lot of information that's involved in this book. As you can see, they have a lot of lore and information about the lore of the Wood Elves, which is really nicely done as well. As you can see, Mathias Eliasson has done a beautiful job with the desktop publishing that he has done on this book. In fact, it looks like it's actual official Games Workshop materials. That's how much of a good job he did on this document. So it's very, very impressive as well, very well thought out. Now, the parts we'll be focusing on first will be the Deepwood Host, where we actually go through the Army special rules as well as all the units are located within. We'll also talk about some of the magical items, the spites, as well as some of the spells that they can use for the army as well, and then we'll finish off with the army list. So first of all, let's go and talk about the Deepwood Host real quick and talk about the Army's special rules. So there have been some significant changes to the Wood Elf army. First of all, Always Strike First is no longer an army-wide special rule for Elvish individuals within this army. So they decided to take that out in 9th edition. So they've done that for both High Elves as well as Dark Elves as well, and Wood Elves, of course, have gotten the same treatment. Instead, what they have instead is what's called Elven Grace, which means that models of this special rule have a 6-up dodge in close combat. However, this cannot be used in enemies attacking with a higher initiative value than the defending model. So they've also changed it up a little bit. Now, Blessings of the Ancient rule has also been modified a little bit. It says basically if you're within 6 inches of a forest, you add +1 to all dispel as well as cast attempts for your spells. So that one's kind of cool because you have to just be within 6 inches of a forest. You don't necessarily need to be inside of one anymore as well. Forest Spirit is still a rule that they still have here. The Forest Spirit still costs fear. They have Force Strider as well as magical attacks and immunity psychology, and they also have a 6-up ward save. In addition, units of Forest Spirits may only be joined by characters that are also Forest Spirits themselves. Then of course we have the rule for the ambush from the Wild Roots. A Wood Elf army can always place an additional forest no more than 12 inches in diameter on the battlefield. This is done during deployment before any units are deployed and must be placed wholly in your half of the battlefield. This forest is not a mysterious terrain. Declare its type when you place it. If you cannot fit the forest on your half of the table, move other terrain features by the shortest distance necessary so that the forest can be placed. If you still cannot place the forest, or if the scenario means that the Wood Elf army does not have a table half in which to deploy, this additional forest is not used in this battle. We also have Azrai longbows as well. It has the special longbow ability. It says all shots of this weapon have armor piercing 1 special rule, which is very important for that because with the new changes for the rules for shooting, so long as you don't move, units armed with short bows, regular bows, as well as long bows can actually shoot twice during the shooting phase, which is actually kind of cool. And then of course we have Azrai Archery. It says models of this special rule do not suffer the normal -1 to hit penalty for moving and shooting, which is really important because Wood Elf units are heavily reliant on shooting and they also move quite a bit, so it's actually kind of cool in that one. Now we do see some major changes with enchanted arrows. So as before, we have our different types of arrows that we can use, but they have done some major changes to it. For example, Arcane Bodkins. Shooting attacks made with Arcane Bodkins have the armor piercing 1 special rule. So they no longer get the -3 for AP, they only have -1 now. When combined with your Azrai bow, that gives you a value of -2 for shooting for armor saves. So it's still pretty significant, but they kind of nerfed it a little bit, which is kind of sad. Next, we have Hagmane Tips. Shooting attacks made with Hagmane Tips have the poison attack special rule. And they've also changed the special rule for poison attacks. Now it's +1 to wound now. So this one is actually pretty important change right there. We have Starfire Shafts, which means that shooting attacks made with Starfire Shafts force enemies to reroll any successful panic test caused by them. So once again, major change there. We have Swift Shiver Shards, which means that shooting attacks made with Swift Shiver Shards, there we go, allow the model to fire multiple shots even moving that turn, so they can still do multiple shots if they move, so kind of important for that. And then finally we have True Flight Arrows. Shooting attacks made with True Flight Arrows have the Ignore Cover special rule, which means it doesn't matter where you're hiding, they're going to hit you, so that's also really important change that we have there as well. Now, going to the individual units, we have Highborns, of course, which are our generals. They have Azrael Archery, Elven Grace, as well as Force Strider. If you notice, they took out that special rule where generals can, take a pot shot at your enemy. They took out that rule, so that's no longer part of their army special rule anymore. Same thing with Spell Singers. They kind of changed them up a little bit as well. Before, you could actually access any lore of magic that you wanted to. Now they're limited. They can only take spells from the lore of Beasts, Life, Light, Heaven, Shadow, or in this case, Athalorn. So those are the only spells they can actually choose from now. So they can no longer take, if I remember correctly, they can no longer take spells from lore of High Magic or lore of Dark Magic. They can only do lore of Athalorn or one of the other ones. So that one I kind of feel bad about for Wood Elf players, just because they kind of limited your magical abilities. That's always messed up when they do that. I guess they wanted to hit them with a nerf ban on that one because, balance, oh my god, balance. So I guess that's a real concern for them when it comes to magic on that one. Next, we also have a brand new unit, which is called an Arch Revenant. This is actually a unit from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So let's talk about the Arch Revenant real quick. It's got movement 5, 6 weapon skill, and ballistic skill. It's got 4 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 7 initiative, 4 attacks, and 9 leadership. It is a character. It's got Elven Grace, Fly, as well as a Force Spirit rule. And they have a special rule called Call to Battle. All friendly units with the Force Strider Spirit special rule within 6 inches gain the Frenzy special rule as long as they remain within range. So if you're looking for a buff for your Force Spirit units, this one is actually quite good, which is actually kind of cool. Then of course we have Glade Guard. They have relatively remained the same, so no change there. Same thing with Deepwood Scouts. They have primarily remained the same as well, as has Glade Riders. Not much change there. The difference though now is that Glade Riders do not automatically come with the Ambusher special anymore, so that's actually pretty significant, so I do apologize for that. Now for Eternal Guard, let's go and talk about those guys real quick. Eternal Guard have the Elven Grace and Force Strider rule, but they also have what's called a Serath, I believe is how you pronounce that. That's that double-bladed spear that they can use. As you can see, they get +1 attack using that weapon as well, and in case of if they get charged by War Beasts, Cavalry, Monstrous Infantry, Monstrous Beasts, Monstrous Cavalry, Chariots, or Monsters, they get +1 initiative, and they get a strength, a +1 strength bonus as well. And they also can find extra ranks with this weapon, so it makes them a little bit more kitted out for close combat, which is good because Wood Elves have always been traditionally weak when it comes to close combat, so that's kind of like a nice rule change for them. And of course we have Wildwood Rangers. These guys are the ones who are packing the great weapons. They have Guardians of the Wildwood. If a model with this special rule is in base contact with at least one enemy model with either the Fear or Terror special rule, they have +1 attack, so very excellent for monster hunting. And of course we have our War Dancers. War Dancers have relatively remained the same. They do have their different dances that they can use as well. Same thing with our Shadow Dancer characters. Those guys are still there as well, and they also have their abilities still, so they're pretty much very similar to what they used to be during Warhammer 8th edition. Same thing with Way Watchers. Way Watchers are actually a little bit different. I don't remember if they have these traps or not. Let's go and talk about that real quick. So one of the upgrades they have, of course, is they can use traps now, which was something I saw back in Warhammer 4th edition when I was a kid, where they basically had this way of actually setting up traps. I can't remember if these were actually a feature that they used in Warhammer 8th edition or not, but whatever the case may be now, they can use traps, which is really, really cool. And same thing with the Waystalkers. We still have those characters as well. They got Sniper special rules attached to them, as well as Lethal Shot special rules for them too, so very cool there. Wild Riders have remained the same for the most part. They still have Devastating Charge. They still have 4 Spirit special rules and Frenzies, so one of the deadliest light cavalry that's out there, which is actually kind of cool. We still have the Sisters of the Thorn, and of course they're still able to do what they usually do. They got poison attacks, they have their Deepwood Coven spells, so very similar to what they used to be before. Warhawk Riders are still relatively the same, so we're just going to move past those guys. We have a brand new unit now called Altars, what they're called. Now, I remember seeing these guys back during the 3rd edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, I think. In fact, I remember seeing these guys in catalogs and miniatures when I was a kid. So let's talk about these guys real quick. So for the most part, they're just your typical elf with typical elven rules for those guys. However, they have Elven Grace, they cause fear, they're also got Forest Strider and Skirmisher rules, but what these guys can do now is take an animal form. It says, at the start of each turn, models with a special rule may either choose one of the following animal forms, and the effect of which lasts until the end of that turn. All allies and the altars in the same unit must choose the same form. Altars cannot choose the same form in 2 consecutive rounds of combat, however. We have the form of the bear, which basically gives them +1 movement, +2 strength, +1 toughness, -2 initiative, but +2 attacks. The form of the wolf, which gives them +4 movement and +1 attack. They also get the devastating charge and the swift strike special rule. The form of the stag, which gives them +4 movement, +1 strength, as well as impact hits and swift stride. And then finally we have the form of the boar, which gives them +2 movement, +1 toughness, the swift stride special rule, and +2 strength on the turn that they charge. So these guys are very, very cool in that sense. Now, the problem with these guys, though, they're primarily glass cannons because their toughness characteristic is still pretty much a 3 for the most part, maybe up to level 4. So these guys are definitely used for shock and awe and just kind of like flanking units and, kind of hitting hard that way, which is actually kind of cool seeing those units coming back again. And we also have Meadow Chariots now too, so that's a brand new unit that's attached for Wood Elves. Wood Elves can now take chariots, which is absolutely fantastic. So if you're one of those kind of players that likes putting your Wood Elves on chariots, you can now bring them, which is kind of neat. So Dryads. Let's talk about Dryads real quick. So unfortunately, Dryads did get hit with the nerf bat a little bit. And at the same time, they have some upgrades. It's kind of like a lost some, win some type of situation. So let's talk about that real quick. So first of all, they have weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4. They nerfed their strength and toughness down to 3 again. But they got 2 up attacks. They also have hatred and force spirit still. But what they now have is what are called tree aspects, which means that Dryads at the start of a round of close combat in which they're fighting, models of this special rule can choose one of the following tree aspects. The effect will last until the end of the turn or until a new tree aspect is chosen. This is done before impact hits are resolved. All Dryads in the same unit must choose the same tree aspect, and Dryads cannot choose the same tree aspect in 2 consecutive turns of combat. Why? Who knows? So, moving on, we have what's called the Birch aspect, which means that while in this aspect, the Dryads gain +1 attack, so hooray. We have the Oak aspect, which gives them +1 toughness, which is great as well. And then, of course, we have the Willow aspect, which gives them -1 to hit against in close combat. So their strength has definitely been nerfed on that part, so that part's kind of sad. However, there is some good news with these guys. You can make them into skirmishers according to the army list rules, so we do have that aspect going into it as well. So there you have it when it comes to Dryads. Now, we also have a brand new unit called Branch Wraiths. These are from Age of Sigmar that you can actually bring into your army as well. Branch Wraiths, they have a weapon skill of movement 5, weapon skill and ballistic skill 6. They have 4 strength and 4 toughness, 2 wounds, 7 initiative, 3 attacks, as well as 9 leadership. Branch Wraiths are also level 1 wizards who use spells from the Lore of Life or Athaloran. Their special rules are Blessings of the Ancient, Forest Spirit, Hatred, as well as Tree aspects as well. So if you want to have a level 1 caster character in your unit, you can definitely have those guys join up as well. Now, we also have Tree Revenants, which are also another Age of Sigmar Forest Spirit unit from the Sylvaneth line. As you can see, they got 5 movement, weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 4, 3 strength and 3 toughness, 1 wound, 5 initiative, 2 attacks, and 8 leadership. They have the Forest Spirit special rule, and they have a special rule called Martial Memories, which means models with this special rule may reroll 1s when rolling to hit and to wound, so very nice there. And the most important ability they have is called Spirit Walk. Instead of moving normally, the unit can walk the spirit paths during the remaining movement sub-phase, remove the unit from play, and sit up so that the center of the unit are within any wood on the table. So these guys have definitely got movement shenanigans that they can use to really help them out. And of course, we have Spite Revenants, which is of course another Sylvaneth unit that came over to Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So we have movement 5, weapon skill and ballistic skill 4, 3 strength and toughness, 1 wound, 5 initiative, 2 attacks, 8 leadership. They have the Forest Spirit rule. They also got Hatred as well as Skirmisher special ruled, and they have what's called Unbridled Malice. Spite Revenant's Hatred rule applies in all rounds of close combat, not just the first. In addition, enemy units in base contact with them must reroll successful leadership tests. This has no effect on units that have immune to psychology. So That's kind of a neat one as well. Make pretty good flankers in order to mess around with your enemy's break tests, as how you probably would use these guys for the most part. So, we now have Sylvan Hunters too, which are also known as Kurnoth Hunters in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. They have now been brought to Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So these guys are really cool. Kurnoth Hunters and Age of Sigmar were awesome, and now they look like they're doing pretty good here in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So they got movement 5, weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 4, 4 strength and toughness, 3 wounds, 4 initiative, 3 attacks, and 8 leadership for base. They are monstrous infantry. They have the flammable special rule, which makes sense since they're made out of wood. They got 4 spirit as well as 5 up natural armor. And these guys can also be equipped with great bows, which are long bows. A great bow has a range of 36 inches and strength 5, and any shots made with it have the magical attack special rule. So very powerful there. They also what's called the Tanglehorn Thicket. At the start of either player's movement phase, Sylvan Hunters can sprout a thick weave of thorn branches, and until the end of the turn they cannot involuntarily move but count as being in hard cover. So these guys are really good at shooting and at the same time being protected. Very, very awesome that they brought these units into Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Then of course we have the good old-fashioned Treekin. Now these guys are pretty nice because they still have a 5-up toughness, so they're pretty good. Weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 5, movement 5, which is nice because they can actually move now pretty quickly. Weapon skill, ballistic skill are still at 4, 5 toughness, 3 wounds, 3 initiative, 3 attacks, 8 leadership. They got flammable, 4 spirit, natural armor 4 up, and as well as stubborn. So they've actually improved these guys quite a bit. So that is also really nice to see that as well. And of course we have our Treemen. I believe the Treemen relatively stay the same for the most part, so not much has really changed for them. Same thing with the Treeman Ancient. Treeman Ancient could take spells from the Lore of Life or Athalorn. However, they did nerf the Treeman Ancient a little bit. Before, you could actually have a level 4 wizard for a Treeman Ancient. Now they're capped at level 2, so that part's not so nice. Now, Great Eagles, of course, remained the same for the most part, so not much change there. Same thing with Elven Steeds. They have not really changed all that much either, so we're still good there. We also have Great Stags. They, of course, have not changed all that much either, as well as Unicorns. They relatively remain the same. Now, Forest Dragons, of course. Now, this is the part that's really cool about Forest Dragons. Forest Dragons can actually just be fielded by themselves. They don't necessarily need to be mounts for characters anymore. Before, in Warhammer 8th edition, you can only put a character on a Forest Dragon, and that was the only way you can take them into your army. But now, they're actually 4 spirits on their own right, and they can actually be taken without riders, which is really, really cool. So that way you can add into your rare choices, which is pretty awesome on that part as well. So very nice there. They relatively stay the same in terms of stats and special rules, but now they can just be taken by themselves, which is all kinds of awesome. Now, that pretty much makes up the army list, so up next we're going to talk about the special characters. Alright, let's go and talk about the special characters now. So up first is Orion, the King of the Woods, who is this main special character for the Wood Elves on this one. Lots of lore attached to that guy. As you can see, his stats have relatively remained the same for the most part as well. He's also accompanied by his 2 Warhounds. For the most part, from what I'm seeing so far, it looks like pretty much all the rules are pretty much remain the same for this guy. So we're not going to worry too much about Orion because he's pretty much similar to Warhammer 8th edition. However, we do have Ariel, Mage Queen of Lorne. She is now brought back into Warhammer 8th edition as well. Last time I saw her was, I think, was 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, I think, is the last time I saw her. So let's go ahead and talk about her stats real quick. So she's got movement 5, weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 5, strength and toughness of 4 points apiece, 5 wounds, 7 initiative, 1 attack, and leadership 10. She's a level 4 wizard who uses spells from the lore of Athalorn. She's got Azrai Archery, Blessings of the Ancients Fly, Forest Spirit, as well as Lore Master of Athalorn. She has Aura of the Fey Queen. Ariel has a War Save of 5 up. In addition, all friendly units within 6 inches of her have immunity to panic. She's also a Screech, which is basically Ariel's attacks automatically hits all enemy models in base contact. It also has a Norse special armor rule, and she has Earthbind. Any units declaring a charge on Ariel count as moving through dangerous terrain for the duration of the turn. In addition, if Ariel flees from combat, any enemies attempting to pursue her roll an extra d6 when determining her pursuit distance and discard the highest result as well. She's got the Dart of Doom, which is a one-use only item. The Dart of Doom has a range of 12 inches. If the dart hits a model, it causes 1 automatic wound which ignores armor saves. If the wound is not saved, the dart sucks energy out of the victim, draining the strength characteristic by d3 to a minimum of 1. She also has the Heartstone of Athelorn. This magic item grants Ariel the magic resistance 2 special rule. In addition, if she successfully dispels a spell targeted at her, the casting wizard must immediately take a leadership test. If he fails, he immediately loses a wizard level and may not cast that spell for the remainder of the game. We also have the Wand of Witch Elm. And it says this staff allows any failed dispel attempt to be re-rolled. We have the Berry Wine, which is one use only. The wine can be drunk at the start of any phase. Ariel will immediately regain up to D3 wounds previously lost in the battle. And we have the Acorn of Ages. It says one use only. At the start of the game, after the battlefield has been set up, but before deployment begins, place a forest no more than 12 inches in diameter on the battlefield. And once the forests have been placed, it scatters 2d6 inches. And you see that we have that rule there as well. So they took away the Acorn of Ages as a general magical item that you could use for the army, and they gave it to Ariel instead, which kind of makes sense considering she's the queen of the Wood Elves. Then, of course, we have Araloth, the Lord of Taliesin. He's relatively remained the same, so we're not going to talk about him too much. We also have a brand new character named Thalandor Doomstar. He's a special character who rode a Great Eagle. I believe he was around in the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, I believe. So as you can see, your weapon skill 7, ballistic skill 7, 4 strength, 3 toughness, 3 wounds, 8 initiative, 4 attacks, 10 leadership, Elven Grace Fly, 4 Strider. He's got the Spear of Daith, which gives him a parry save on a 4-up even while mounted. And he's got the Talisman of Gwar, which gives his enemies suffer -1 hit against Thalandor and Gwandor with missile attacks. So that rule is still appreciated there as well. Now, Durthu Orkhart. They've actually changed this guy up a little bit as well. The Eldest of Ancients. Let's talk about him real quick. So, his stats have relatively remained the same. He's also still level 1 wizard, uses spells and lower beasts, so that part has stayed the same too. He's got Strangleroot, Stubborn, Tree Whack. All that stuff is still the same. But now, his attacks have changed a little bit. He's got what's called Unburden of Thieflings. So an Unburden of Thieflings is a close combat attack that can be used in addition to Durthu's other attacks. It has the following profile. It's got Strength of 2, magical poison attacks, and they cause D6 random attacks. And any enemy that suffer wounds from any of these attacks suffer -1 to hit and to wound, as well as -1 to their armor saves until your next turn. So it's no longer a shooting attack, it's a close combat attack, but it also debuffs his enemies, which makes it easier to kill for your character. And now that huge flaming sword that he always carried is now an actual magical weapon now. It's called the Sword of Daith, and this sword allows Durthu to reroll to fail to hit rolls every turn, not just in the first. In addition, he can never lose frenzy special rules, so that part is really cool too. Finally got some magical attacks with that sword of his, which is really neat. And then of course we have Dryka. Dryka has relatively remained the same, so we're not going to talk about her too much. She's pretty much the same as she was before. Level 2 wizard now. The only difference though is that she can no longer use the lore of shadows anymore. She can either use the lore of life or the lore of Athelorn for the most part. And of course we have Nature and Arahan. Those two characters are still pretty much the same for the most part, so we're not going to delve into them too much because they're pretty much the same. We have Nath, the Prophetess, High Seer of Athelorn. Her character is a throwback character from the older editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. As you can see, she's got 5 movement, 4 weapon skill, ballistic skill, 3 toughness and strength, 2 wounds, 5 initiative, 1 attack, as well as 8 leadership. She's a level 2 wizard who knows spells from the lore of beasts, life, light, heaven, shadow, or Athelorn as well. She's got Othu the Owl, which is basically set on a unit of Wood Elves with a standard bearer at the start of the shooting phase. This unit may then reroll 2 hit rolls of 1 with missile attacks that turn. The Owl never settles on the same unit twice in succession. Othu is not vulnerable to weapons, missiles, or magic, but if Nath is removed from play, Othu flies away. So her little pet owl grants bonuses now. She also has the Rod of Divination, and the Rod of Divination gives Nath an extra power dice at the start of each magic phase as well. And then we have Lothland the Brave, who is another throwback character. He's a battle standard bearer of Athelorn. Pretty decent stats with 6 weapon skill and ballistic skill, 4 strength, and 3 toughness with 2 wounds and 3 attacks. And he's got the battle standard of Athelorn, and it says this is the army's battle standard. Any enemy spell cast at friendly within 12 inches of the standard is automatically dispelled on a roll of 5 up. So pretty powerful ability, all things considered. And then, of course, we have Scarlock, who's another throwback character from older editions. He's a master, the Wayfinder. As you see here, he's got pretty decent stats. Typical over here, he's got the Rune Sword of Darkwood. This weapon gives Scarlock the Always Strike First and Armor Piercing special rules. And he's got Ascendi's Bane, which is basically an asteroid longbow. This weapon allows Scarlock to reroll all missed shooting attacks. However, if the shot still misses after this reroll, then he suffers a strength 3 hit. So we have that character as well. We also have Ska, which is another character as well. This is the guy who was a throwback from the 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle. This guy was pretty much had an eagle cape and feathers and stuff. 5 weapon skill, 5 ballistic skill, 4 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 2 attacks. And let's talk about him real quick. So he's got falcons. Ska may use his 3 falcons in addition to another missile weapon during the start of the shooting phase. The falcons can be directed against any enemy unit within line of sight and regardless of range. The enemy unit must take a weapon skill test for each falcon targeting them. If failed, the unit takes a strength 3 hit. In close combat, the falcons give Ska additional 3 attacks that result in weapon skill 4, strength 3, and initiative 4. These attacks do not benefit from any special rules or items that Ska might have. Then we have the Lash of Claws, which is a whip made up of eagle claws. It says the Lash of Claws gives Ska the strength bonus 1 and always strike first special rule. In addition, if the victim is hit but not wounded, it is temporarily ensnared by the flail and loses 1 attack for the duration of the turn. And then, of course, we have the Cape of Feathers, which basically gives him a 3-up save against missile attacks and a 6-up ward save. So that's what we have there for that. And then we have Gruath the Beastmaster. Gruath the Beastmaster, if I remember correctly, he's an Alterkin special character who's also a throwback, if I remember correctly as well. So as you can see, he's got 2 Warhounds that travel with him as well. Pretty decent stats. He's also got the mixed unit special rule attached to him. At the same time, he's got that Beastmaster rules. Basically means that the beast must stay with him. He's got his animal hide cape, giving him some pretty decent armor saves. He's also got the binding bolas, and basically it's a missile weapon that causes armor piercing 1, multiple shots 2, and also the sniper rule as well. And it says if the target is hit but not slain, then it is temporarily entangled and cannot move in their next turn. Entangled enemies may be left behind, counting as casualties, or in the case of a character, as they had left the unit. So those are the special characters that we have for the Wood Elves in the 9th edition rules created so far. Alright, up next we're going to talk about magic real quick. So like I said before, the Wood Elves have lost the ability to use hide magic as well as dark magic. However, they did bring back the lore of Athaloran, which is a throwback magical system from older editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So of course the lore attribute is called Verdurous Harmony. Whenever a spell from the lore of Athaloran is cast on a friendly unit, that unit immediately recovers 1 wound worth of models as described in the regrowth spell in the Lore of Life. We have Tree Singing, which is their signature spell, cast up on a 6-up. It's an augment spell, which targets a single forest within 24 inches of the caster. If there are no units within the forest, it immediately moves d6 plus 1 inches in the direction of your choice. A forest cannot move to within 1 inch of units or other terrain features. If there is at least 1 unit, friendly or enemy, within the forest, then the forest does not move. Instead, choose a single enemy unit, at least partially within the forest, and the unit immediately suffers 2d6 strength 4 hits. The wizard could choose to increase to have this spell target all forests within 12 inches. If they do so, the casting value is sped up to 12 plus. Then we have a call Fury of the Forest, which is cast up at a 6-up. It is a direct damage spell with a range of 24 inches. If successfully cast, the spell causes d6 strength 4 hits. If the target is within 6 inch of a wood, it is increased to 2d6 strength 4 hits instead. The wizard can instead choose to cast a more powerful version affecting all units within 12 inches. If they do so, the casting value is increased to 12 plus. We then have another spell called the Twilight Host, which casts up on a 6-up. It's an augment spell with a range of 24 inches, and until the caster's next magic phase, the unit causes fear. If the unit would already cause fear, it instead causes terror. In addition, the unit will count as having twice the unit strength it already has for the purposes of determining steadfast and outnumber. The wizard can instead, of course, choose to cast a more powerful version, which extends all friendly units within 12 inches, and that do they have a casting value of 12 up. Then we have the Hidden Path, which is cast on a 7-up. Augment spell, 24-inch range. The unit gains the Ethereal special rule until the start of the caster's next magic phase. If the unit becomes engaged in close combat, the spell instantly ends. The wizard can instead choose to cast a more powerful version of the spell, affecting all friendly units within 12 inches. If they do so, casting value is increased to 14 plus. Now this one could be extremely dangerous to go up against, because let's say if you're like a shooting heavy army of some sort fighting against the Wood Elves, you could shoot at them all day and they're all ethereal and it's not going to impact them at all too much with just mundane shooting attacks. So very, very powerful spell there. I can just see how that one could be used. We then have Magical of Greening, which is cast up on a 9-up. It is a range of 12 inches. Place a mysterious force no more than 12 inches in diameter within the spell's maximum range. Any models under this force are placed within them. So that's kind of a nice way of making more trees. We then have Ariel's Blessing, which is cast on a 10+. It is an augment spell, the range of 12 inches. The unit gains a regeneration 4-up special rule until the start of the player's next magic phase. The wizard can instead choose to cast a more powerful version, affecting all friendly units within 12 inches. If they do so, the casting value is increased to 20+. So another powerful spell there as well. And then we have the 6th spell, the Call of the Hunt, cast up an 11+. It is an augment spell, the range of 18 inches. And until the start of the caster's next magic phase, the unit gains +1 attack. If the unit is not engaged in combat, it immediately moves forward towards the closest enemy unit using the random movement 2d6 special rule. The wizard can instead choose to cast a more powerful version, affecting all friendly units within 12 inches. If they do so, the casting value is at +22. So, while it's kind of sad that they did lose the lore of high and dark magic, I can kind of see what the game developer Mathias Eliasson was going with. You know, high elves have high magic, dark elves have dark magic, and of course wood elves have Athalor magic. So I can kind of understand it. I'm not that ate up when it comes to magic rules, just because I use magic rules because I have to. I'm not a big fan of magic, so I kind of get what they're kind of going with on this one. So now that we have the magic rules over with, let's go and talk about magical items, and that's the next thing we'll be talking about next. Alright, so up next we're going to talk about some more upgrades, and one of the major upgrades that they brought back was Spites of Athalor. These are throwback rules from older editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle for Wood Elves. So let's go and talk about some of these that we have here. As you can see here, Spites are chosen the same manner as magic items and count towards a maximum number of points a character is allowed to spend on magic items. Therefore, each particular spite choice may only be chosen once in an army. For example, you cannot have 2 models with a murder of spites in the same army. In addition, each character can only choose 1 spite from the list below. However, Treeman Ancients and Branch Wraiths may have any number of spites to the limit of their allowance, 100 points and 50 points respectively. So once again, spites do make a comeback. As you can see, we have the Blight of Terrors, which is 25 points. A model with the Blight of Terrors causes terror. We have a Cluster of Radiance for 25 points. Treeman Ancient and Branch Wraith only. A character with Radiance add 1 extra dice to their Dispel pool for the aura in their opponent's magic phase. We have an Annoyance of Netlings, which is 20 points. Any enemy attempting to strike a character with an Annoyance of Netlings in close combat will suffer -1 to hit. We also have a Muster of Malevolence, there we go, for 15 points. A Muster of Malevolence is a shooting attack that can be used in addition to the model's other shooting attacks. It has the following profile: range of 12 inches, strength 2, magical attacks, multiple shots of d6, poison attacks, as well as quick to fire. We also have a Pageant of Strikes, which is 15 points. A Pageant of Strikes is a shooting attack that can be used in addition to the model's other shooting attacks. It has the following profile: 18-inch range, strength 4, magical attack, slow to fire, and the sniper special rule. We have a Murder of Spites, which is 10 points. Strength 2, it's a close combat attack as well. And it's also got magical attacks, poison attacks, random attacks, and d6. We have a Befuddlement of Mischiefs, which is 15 points. It's a bound spell level 3. It's a magic missile, the range of 18 inches, and the target unit counts as having failed a stupidity test in the next turn. We also have Lamentation of Despairs, which is 15 points. It's a bound spell level 3. It's a direct damage spell, the range of 12 inches, which can be used to target enemy characters or monsters. And the targeted model must pass a leadership test or else suffer D3 wounds, which ignores armor saves. So very nice character sniper ability. And then we have a Resplendence of Luminescence, which is 10 points, and a Resplendence of Luminescence give the characters in the unit they join magical attacks. So those are some of the spites that we have for upgrades for our characters as well. Now let's go and take a look at the magical items that are available. We have the Spirit Sword, which is worth 60 points. Basically, there are no armor saves against the Spirit Sword. It says immediately when an enemy's model unit or a character suffers 1 or more unsaved wounds from the Spirit Sword, both they and the wielder must roll 2d6 and add the respective leadership values. If the wounded model's total is higher or the totals are the same, nothing happens. If the wounded model's total is lower, it immediately suffers a wound which ignores armor saves for each point by which the total was exceeded. So very deadly weapon in that case as well. We also have the Bow of Lorn, which is 25 points. It's got multiple shots with your attack characteristic +1. And it's also got strength 4, which is very cool. We got the Helm of the Hunt, which is worth 40 points. It gives you +1 for your combat, +1 for your armor saves for missile attacks. It gives you Frenzy as well as the Force Spirit rule. So if you have characters that you want to join with Force Spirit units, which are not Force Spirits themselves, this is a nice way to do that. They also got the Devastating Charge ability. And of course, we have Daith's Reaper, which is worth 50 points. It's all failed to hit and wound rolls made with Daith Reapers must be rerolled, and must all successful armor saves taken against the wounds caused by this weapon. So kind of dangerous. So they actually kind of upgraded Daith's Reaper a little bit. Now we got the Rhymer's Harp, which is worth 60 points, gives you a 5 award save and a Strider special rule. We got the Hail of Doom Arrow for 35 points and gives you 3d6 strength force shots with 30-inch range, very deadly. Kelangor's Stave, which basically causes when casting the Tree Singing spell, the bearer may reroll the distance the forest moves or the number of hits inflicted. So pretty powerful spell there, pretty powerful item there. We have the Moonstone on Hidden Waves, which is worth 35 points. This one has always been a interesting magic ability, item. It says the bearer's unit is wholly within a forest at the end of your movement phase and not in the combat phase. It can forest walk. If it does so, move it from the battlefield, immediately place it wholly within any forest on the battlefield in the same formation but facing any direction. A forest walking unit cannot be placed within 1 inch of an enemy unit or impassable terrain, and a moving unit that forest walks counts as having marched in the movement phase. So for those of you guys who like using movement shenanigans, this is a very good way in order to do that. We also have the Banner of the Eternal Queen, which is worth 55 points, gives your unit magic resistance 3. In addition, once per game, all models in the same unit as the Banner of the Eternal Queen have the Unbreakable special rule until the end of the turn or until the unit bearer is slain. And then we have the Banner of the Hunter King, which is worth 30 points. All models in the unit at the Banner of the Hunter King have a Vanguard deployment special rule. In addition, the bearer's unit may reroll their first failed charge of the game. And that pretty much makes up the magic items as well as the spite upgrades for this one. And lastly, we're going to talk about the army list for the Wood Elves for the 9th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. So for our lords, of course, we have our point values here with Orion, maybe accompanied by his hounds, which were 20 points apiece. We also got Ariel, as well as Dirth the Oakheart, who's now 335 points, which is kind of cool. We got Eraloth, which is 195 points, Salandor, as well as your Glade Lord with your various upgrades that you guys can see there, which is actually kind of cool. We also got our Spellweaver, go up to level 4 with 35 points there, so that pretty much remains the same. Same thing with your Treeman Ancient, up to 270 points. However, they can only be upgraded to a level 2 wizard. That's the max they can go, but they can also gain 100 points with a Spite, so that's kind of cool. So that's kind of a thing that kind of makes sense for that one as well. And then, of course, as you can see here, we got our heroes. We have Dryka. She's worth 200 points, but she can only take her spells from the Lore of Life or the Lore of Athalorn, so that's kind of rough. And then, of course, we have Naeshtra and Arahan. 175 points, 320 points for the Forest Dragon, or Gwilindor, which is their Great Eagle, which is 100 points there. So that pretty works there for that one. Our two new characters, Nath the Prophetess and Luthlan the Brave, 170 and 160 points respectively. And of course, we got Scarlock, Ska, and Gruoth, which are our friends of the Animal Kingdom, which are worth 110 points, 85 points, and 75 points, respectively. And then, of course, you got your typical Clade Captain that can be upgraded for Army Battle Standard Bearer. We got our Spell Singer, which is like a level 2 caster. We have our Shadow Dancer as well, worth 100. We got our Waystalkers as well as our Branch Wraiths. Branch Wraiths can be upgraded for level 1 Wizard 50 points and may take Spites up to 50 points. And of course, you have our Archrevenant that can also do exactly the same thing, take up a total of 50 points for that character too. So very interesting there. Now for our core units, of course, we have our Glade Guards. Those guys are still pretty much the same with their point values for their weapons. 12 points for those guys there. Also got no armor, as you can see there for the most part. We also say anything with our Deepwood Scouts as well. So they're also core choices now too. Originally, I believe Deepwood Scouts were originally special choices originally, but now these guys are now core, which is actually kind of nice. Eternal Guard, back to 11 points as well. We have our Dryads now, which are worth 11 points per model too. And like I said before, the entire unit can now be upgraded to be skirmishers now, so that's pretty important for them. So that's actually pretty good. I still kind of feel sad they nerfed them in terms of their strength, their toughness, but you know, c'est la vie. And we also have our Glade Riders as well. As you can see, they have all their various upgrades as well for that unit for 17 points per miniature for that unit. And then moving on to our special units, we have our Wildwood Rangers. Those guys are still in the special category. Same thing with our War Dancers and our Wild Riders. So these guys are still Wild Riders, which are pretty cool. And of course, they could also replace their Elven Steeds with Steeds of Kurnos for 2 points apiece now. So Wild Riders do not, it can be what you call it, be upgraded that way, which is actually kind of interesting. They originally come in on Elven Steeds originally, and you have to pay for them in order to upgrade to Kurnos, those stags that they end up riding. So that part's kind of interesting for the most part. All right, so then up next we also got our Meadow Chariots, which are a brand new unit, and as well as our Treekin, as well as our Altars. Treekin are worth 48 points now, while Altars are worth 14 points apiece. We have our Warhawk Riders, which of course they get their upgrades too. Now we also got our Tree Revenants now, which are worth 13 points. It's a brand new unit that we have here, and they can take up pole arms, giving them +1 to their strength, so that's 2 points per model for those guys. And of course we have our Spite Remnants. Those guys are a brand new unit too. They get 12 points per model for those guys. Now moving on to our rare units, we have our Way Watchers, which are worth 20 points per group, which kind of makes sense considering they have traps now. We also have our Sisters of Thorn, as well as our Sylvan Hunters. So those guys are really awesome. Now they're up to 46 points, which are a brand new unit. They can either be equipped with pole arms or great bows, and those are actually free for those. And of course we have our Great Eagles. We also have our Treemen that we have, and one of the coolest things I think ever is that you can actually bring a Force Dragon just by itself, which is worth 320 points. And I think that's actually really cool that you can just bring the Force Dragon all by its lonesome. All right, folks, there you have it. That is my review for the 9th edition army book for Warhammer for the Wood Elves army. In the end, this is still a very excellent and well-written document. I highly recommend it for you to download it off of the Warhammer Armies project website, written by Mathias Eliasson. It's a awesome resource. He's done a lot of really cool things, bringing back some throwback units, some throwback special characters, as well as rules, and bringing into this 9th edition as well. I really appreciate the fact that he's actually including Warhammer Age of Sigmar miniatures into the new army list, which I think is really, really cool. Because as you guys are all aware, I am a cheapskate. So if you can use miniatures for multiple gaming systems, that's like the best possibility for all worlds, ultimately speaking. So like if you can use your same miniatures for Warcraft, not Warcraft, for Warcry, for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, for Warhammer Underworlds, for Mordheim, and then for any of the games, and then you still be able to use them all, that's just a win-win situation for all involved. Especially because they've really adapted the Force Spirit rules, adding a lot more units to it, which is really awesome as well. So I think that is really well done that he's done that as well. In the end, excellent resource, and you can't argue with the price, which is free, which is all kinds of awesome. So definitely download it if you plan on playing Wood Elves for Warhammer 9th edition rules. So that's going to do it for my review on this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to our channel. That's good to do it for this one, you guys. I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out and stay classy.